Hey there, my name is Przemek and today I got for you a label feature. Today we talk about Misantropia Records from Finland. It's a relatively young label because it was founded in 2021 and at this moment it already has quite a few releases under its belt, over 20 I guess, and I wish them very as well as all ventures that still value physical releases. And Misanthropia is a label mainly focused on metal, but also releases dark ambient and dungeon synth music. And today I'll tell you about 5 albums from this label, and as you can guess, those outside the metal universe. And we'll begin with this one. Oh, sorry. This one. Patient Omega, Broken Mind in a Rotting Body. This is a Finnish project of Aki Klem, also known as Grim 666. Okay, and according to Discogs, he released one full album on CD, this one, and a few releases in digital form, well, self-released. Here is what it looks like. Yeah, a nice digipack with probably a painting from a Renaissance or Baroque period. I don't know. There is a nude lady here, so I try to show it in a way that it covers breasts. I know it's stupid, but Facebook almost banned me recently for posting a cover of other album with a naked woman. So I I prefer to be careful. In any case, it's released modestly but aesthetically, and in this respect, there's nothing to find fault with. And the first track on this album is very long. It is titled Hidden Psyche Reveals the Seventh Circle. Over half an hour, but I really like it in terms of building tension, storytelling, and generally the fact that there's a lot of going on in this track, starting with the descent into the depths of hell, perhaps straight to the seventh circle, where you can hear low-tuned drones, hellish calls, and monstrous murmurs. At some point from this black magma, some harmonic passages begin to emerge, captivating with really beautiful synth melodies, in the old style, reminiscent of, for example, Iltfrost from the time of Nathaniel, or the first album by Dahlia Steele, or those from Svetatian album from Pragnavit, or maybe even Burzum from those more atmospheric moments. Honestly, you can hear that this music is created through the prism of the sensibility of an old black metaller, rather than a typical ambient maker or producer. But in this case, it doesn't really bother me, because Aki knows how to keep the listener's attention, leading him through this track like through some short horror story, cosmic horror story perhaps, because we feel like we're slowly emerging from those demonic depths into the embrace of the stars. There's a really great build-up in this track. Same thing goes with the second one, dissolving of the self through ritualized pain. And despite its also long duration, or almost half an hour, the composition is neither boring or tiring, because the musician leads you through it like through a movie, with a plot line that you have to invent yourself. But there's also some atmosphere and darkness and horror, as I said. But dark ambient dominates here, rather melodic with a noticeable northern flavor. But somewhere there are also those ritual drum loops, and even slightly cosmic soundscapes. So we have here both damp dungeons and astronomical observatories from pre-Copernican times, when people searched for esoteric meanings in the stars, and all this works together very well, in the final track, Eradication of Human Emotion, all these inspirations mix and boil all the time, and these cosmic inspirations, even kind of Berlin school maybe become more noticeable, and as if from this medieval darkness at the end, Patient Omega began to look far into the future. Overall, the album is interesting, varied, worth your attention, I guess. Patient Omega. I feel so stupid when I do this, but you know how it is. Political correctness, or whatever. Patient Omega, broken mind in a rotting body. The second album I'd like to talk about today has 10 more tracks than Patient Omega on a Patient Omega album, and it's 17 minutes shorter. The album is called It's Sealed Inside the Church. Very cool title, and the project is The Suspended Apparition. It's a British one-man project by Martin Daniels, probably a fairly experienced musician, because as I checked on Discogs, Martin already played in hardcore bands in the 80s and early 90s, and this album is the only one recorded under this name, The Suspended Apparition, and has nothing to do with hardcore. The musician admits to being fascinated by Krzysztof Penderecki, Georgi Ligeti, as well as early Current 93 or Nurse with Wound. And look at those photos in the booklet. Let me show you. Like this one, or this on this one. I mean, they are fucking creepy. I really like this kind of horror, old school, haunted houses, ghosts, and creepy children. I'm quite susceptible to such emotions, and the cover, the booklet, the titles reflect the musical content of the album well. Let me read you a few titles. The house lights have gone out. The formed spirit face at the window. It's here, looking at you now. The hauntings inside your children's minds. The woods inside the church. And so on, and so on. From all these inspirations, I can actually see something of the terror generated by the early Current 93 indeed, on Nature Unveiled or Dog's Blood Rising. But the Suspended Apparition is more focused on trying to get the gist of classic supernatural horror. It's not a good old Hammer horror, which often makes you smile today, but it's kind of extracting the essence of such stories while filtering out elements that don't work so well today. And it works. This album, listened to at night in the dark, can give you shivers down your spine. Well, there are even jump scares here. The fifth track. The fifth track is called "The Choir That Was Once Present." Those creepy drones flow, and at one point, I jumped at my at my chair. I thought honestly I'm going to piss myself. Uh, Musically, there's nothing new or particularly surprising here. These are interwoven drones shrouded in reverb without any excursions into other musical areas. But maybe this consistency is what makes the album work so effectively. Somehow, in terms of mood, it reminds me a bit of the album Sleep Night Death by Kohl and Kirchenkampf. Uh, and if you're looking for not so subtle but essential and effectively created horror, this album is definitely for you. Best listened to in semi darkness or while reading a good horror novel. Personally, I like horror and I appreciate this album highly, but in ambient music, I'm looking for something a little different. Preferring the horror more in movies or books or video games. But sometimes I'll probably come back to this one when I'll be missing my worst nightmares. This album will not suit you in any way. The suspended apparition, it's sealed inside the church. Yeah, let's get back to Mr. Grimm 666 and another of his projects, uh, Waeltaja. I have two of his albums by Waeltaja. Let me show you. Heremit and Behold the Ruins of My Kingdom. Grimm released quite a few albums under this name, and basically this music is dungeon synth. You probably know my opinion about this genre, which is not very enthusiastic, to put it mildly. I don't want to ponder the phenomenon of this genre once again. I've done it many times and I haven't come to any very groundbreaking conclusions. I just have to accept the facts. Dungeon synth is popular, is trendy, and liked genre today. Often, perhaps with a slight note of indulgence, but still, it's definitely more liked than dark ambient, for that matter. However, these two albums don't even come off the worst in the context of the genre my perception of it. Why? The matter is simple. Because despite the fantasy surroundings manifested in the graphic design, let me show you, and the titles of the albums and songs, musically, musically, more than a medieval fantasy of his colleagues in the profession, Grimm leans towards those non-metal tracks on metal albums by Burzum, like Tomhead or that long track with a long title from Philosophen. Let me put it this way. When I hear cheap drums, flutes, or other quasi-medieval sounds imitated by keyboard, sounding like a tawdry reflection of the atmosphere of some medieval fairground, I feel nothing but embarrassment. But if it's a dungeon synth based on, purely synth melodies and passages, then I am still able to accept it without gnashing my teeth. Fortunately, Waeltaja belongs to this second category. Of course, it doesn't mean that this project will suddenly become one of my favorites. No way, no, nothing like that. But it is recorded and arranged competently, painting melancholic fantasy-like pictures of dark winter forests lit by stars and aurora borealis, ruins of old castles looming on some nearby hills. It's not a nightly adventure, heroic fantasy, or anything like that. If you recall Skyrim, the video game, apart from fighting dragons, monsters, etc., we had in this game a brilliantly presented exploration of the world, often desolate when you couldn't meet anyone, man or monster, for long minutes. Skyrim really did it great. I often, during gaming, just stopped for a moment to absorb this extraordinary magical atmosphere. That game also had a great soundtrack, but it's another matter. Waeltaja manages to recreate this atmosphere to a certain extent in a quite effective way, limiting the tackiness as much as the musician could afford to within the frames of this genre. Regarding the melody, again, you can still hear that the musician comes from the metal scene. These are arrangements and melodies that are easy to imagine played on electric guitars. And for example, this leading theme, the fourth track of on Heremite, Chains of Eternal Loss. I can even hear in my head the version of the track played with blast beats and black metal tremolos. Now, when I think of it, Summoning would also be a good lead. Everything I said applies to both albums, but if I had to choose which one I like more, I would point Heremite. Because on this Beholding the Ruins of My Kingdom, the center of gravity of this album often dangerously shifts from these Burzhumian, Skyrimian soundscapes towards the infantile melodies that hordes of Mortis imitators are so fond of. And such atmospheres are no longer acceptable for me. And on Behold, there are quite a few of them. So if I had to choose, it would be Heremite. But for Dungeon Synth fans, I think you can try both. And finally, we have this album, Enter the Seasonal Ritual by The Cult of Sunlight. I hope when I show the hair-covered ass, nothing will ban me. Whatever. This is another project by Martin Daniels from the Suspended Apparition. Again, inspired at least partially by horror, but this time we leave the haunted mansions on the English moors and explore the subject of folk horror, often in a psychedelic forms from the 70s. You know, the Wicker Man. But here we have not only horror, because the album also tells about witchcraft, but not in a negative context, but as a way of life and perception of the spiritual world, which is not evil at all. And this is not, it's just as good way of seeking spiritual fulfillment as a religion or something for other people, you know. Actually, I've just blurted about this horror, but when I think of it more deeply, there's not so much horror here. There are rituals, you know, pagan dances by the bonfire, like those in the pictures in the booklet. Like here, this booklet is actually pretty nice, I have to admit. There is a kind of worship of nature as the highest deity, but all this is presented in a positive and somehow somewhat tempting way. In the insert we have listed some of the musicians' inspirations, like 70s dark folk of Changes, Comus and the Incredible String Band as the initial inspirations for the project, then bringing in the early 70s acid psych folk moments of Amon-Dul 1 and 2, Paul Giovanni's legendary soundtrack for The Wicker Man, and equally legendary French composer Camille Saint-Saëns' classic Danse Macabre, which is Daniel's favorite ever piece of music. And these inspirations quite accurately reflect the content of the album. We have 14 tracks here, rather short and quite difficult to classify unequivocally. There's definitely dark acid folk presence, manifested in the wide use of acoustic guitars and repetitive drums, cinematic feeling, yes, absolutely. And this crowd aura is also noticeable here, or rather krautrock influences during the musician's creative process, as basically each track is based on successive overlapping loops, mantrically repeated motifs, and the trance atmosphere. Sometimes it just begged to add a bit of sound of an electric guitar, at least in my in my opinion, or extend a few tracks, add another layer to them, and another, especially since on the other hand some of the other tracks are not so good in my opinion and unnecessary. I think that this formula would do this album well. Fewer tracks but longer and more kind of developed, although maybe it was a musician's intention to paint such short impressions as if illustrations or of individual scenes in a film. I didn't mention it before, but Mr. Daniels is also a filmmaker with a few shorts and one full-length movie under his belt, if I'm not mistaken. And it seems he also makes music for his films. Anyway, I think that out of all the projects discussed today, it is the Cult of Sunlight that I'm most curious about what the future holds for this project. It's a project that stands out in a Misantropia catalog, and generally it has a certain original style to it in general, as well as room for further development, I guess. Yeah, so this was the cult of sunlight enter the seasonal ritual. Misantropia Records. I don't know anything about their metal releases. I didn't check it, whether they are good or not. You have to look elsewhere for that kind of information or opinions or reviews. But those non-metal ones, okay, maybe listening to any of these albums wasn't any mind-blowing experience for me, but they are pretty competent and interesting, worth checking out. I'll leave a link to their Bandcamp in the description of this video, so if you are interested, check them out. That would be everything for today. Thanks for watching and see you soon.